Great. Welcome everyone. I'm gonna wait 1 more minute as people trickle in, or maybe just a few seconds. Great. So let's get us started. Good morning and welcome to our online audience. My name is Caroline Delaire and I'm the Director of Programs at Aquaya. Aquaya is a research organization whose mission is to produce evidence and knowledge to support decisions in the WASH sector. Today's session, we'll talk about rural water supply, and we will address 2 topics: improving financial management and improving water safety. You will hear from 7 presenters. Marieke Adenk, who is a program officer at IRC. IRC is an international think tank working with governments, NGOs, and local stakeholders to find long-term WASH solutions. Martin Watsisi is IRC's regional WASH advisor based in Uganda. If he's able to join, you'll hear from Igor Markov, Director of Business Development at International Lifeline Fund. Lifeline implements humanitarian programs and social enterprises that improve access to clean water and energy. Philip Deal, Director of Community Engagement at Water4. Water4 starts and scales water businesses with local entrepreneurs in rural Africa. And it's actually Philip Deal is also supplemented by his colleague Mandy Goxku today. My colleagues Catherine Marshall, Bashir Yashori, and Edina Samuel from Aquaya, who lead our implementation research in Ghana and Uganda. And finally, you will hear closing remarks by Nabil Chemali, who is Senior Program Officer at the Hilton Foundation. And before we start, I would like to acknowledge and thank the Hilton Foundation, who funded and supported a large part of the interventions and innovative work you will hear about today. So our agenda today is divided into 3 parts of approximately equal length. First, we'll have a gallery walk. Each presenter will give a very brief overview of an intervention or innovative strategy they have tried to promote either financial management or water safety in rural water supplies. This part is a pre-recorded video to make sure we don't have any technical issues and also to accommodate different time zones. The video will be followed by a panel in which I will ask each presenter 1 or 2 questions. And we will continue discussions in 2 breakout rooms. So we'll have 1 breakout room on financial management and 1 on water safety. And the breakout rooms are really the Q&A session, the Q&A part of today's event. So the audience will be able to ask their questions, either clarifying or bigger picture questions to each panelist. So I will start the breakout rooms in about 40 minutes when we get there, and you will be able to join whichever you choose. Please also feel free to use the chat on the website to provide any question you want answered during the Q&A session. So here are the names of 8 strategies or interventions you will hear about today. Master planning, village savings and loan associations, water funds, cross-subsidies, branded kiosks, and pump chlorinators, water actually twice, once in Ghana, once in Uganda, water safety plans, and a water quality assurance fund. So during the video and later throughout the session, please answer the poll that you can find on the conference website, asking you how successful you think these different interventions or strategies might be in the rural water sector. So you feel free to answer during the video of the presentations or later throughout the session. I think you can answer multiple times if your perspective evolves, but we'd love to hear from you on your perspectives. So that's it in terms of introductions. Let's start with our first part, the gallery walk, where you'll hear from all 7 speakers.
My name is Marieke Adank and I'm from IRC. And in this presentation, I will introduce district-wide master planning, which is about the development and implementation of long-term climate resilient plans at district level to achieve sustainable water, sanitation and hygiene services for all and forever. Although districts tend to have medium-term and annual wash plans in place, they often lack long-term, robust, strategic and realistically costed plans with clear visions, for example, towards achieving SDG 6. IRC has been addressing this challenge by supporting the development and implementation of long-term strategic plans for achieving sustainable wash services for everyone in a district. These plans are owned and developed by local government and its partners. They are based on a thorough assessment of the current situation and include a jointly agreed vision and strategic directions and plans for getting there. These master plans are costed and include strategies for covering all life cycle costs. So that means not only the cost for building new assets, but also the cost for ensuring that these are operated, maintained, and when needed, replaced over time. And for supporting wash service providers on an ongoing basis through monitoring, supervision, technical support, and continuous capacity building. Over the last 6 years, IRC has been involved in the development of district-wide master plans in about 26 districts, covering about 4 million people in 6 countries. Master plan implementation is ongoing through collective action by government, development partners, service providers, private sector, and citizens. You will hear more about 2 of these districts, Asutifi North and Cabarole, in the presentations to come. We have found that having in place a robust evidence-based plan helps districts to attract funding. We've also seen that these master planning processes result in strengthening local systems and capacities for ensuring financial sustainability. For example, strengthened pay-as-you-fetch mechanisms and increased resource allocation from local government and its partners. Therefore, district-wide master planning, taking into account life cycle costs and developing strategies for covering these, is a useful approach for addressing financial sustainability. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Catherine Marshall with the Aquaya Institute. I'm going to briefly tell you about Village Savings and Loans Association-led water funds, unlocking community payments for water with village savings groups. In rural areas, poor transparency and repeated misuse of community water point funds erodes trust in and authority of volunteer management committees tasked with collecting user fees. Water users then hesitate to make regular payments to committees that have largely proven ineffective. Most rural communities are therefore left unable to pay for water point repairs and can face extended periods without service. As the national policies of many countries stipulate that operation and maintenance should primarily be funded through water user fees, the rural water sector must identify strategies to increase payments. Village Savings and Loans Associations, or more broadly community savings groups, are self-selected, self-governed community groups that provide informal but structured financial services to their members. They're primarily intended to allow members to save money and access low-interest loans. Community savings groups also typically have robust accountability mechanisms that reinforce trust among members. These features may make community savings groups more effective than existing water committees at collecting and managing water fees. In this approach, a small percentage of members' payments is dedicated to a water fund, which can only be used for hand pump related expenses. In a 12-month pilot conducted in Kabarole District, Uganda, using the VSLA-led water fund approach, 10 communities went from having no reserve funds for operation and maintenance to having approximately $150 per year on average. These results suggest that VSLAs, or community savings groups, can be used to bolster community payments for water. Additionally, we saw instances where the Water Point Management Committee effectively collaborated with the savings group to increase community motivation for maintenance. And after using the VSLAs to manage water user fees, communities felt more confident in their ability to quickly pay for water point repairs when needed. The end.
Hello, I'm Igor Markov from International Lifeline Fund in Uganda, and I'm here to share our experience and ideas to improve funding for rural operation and maintenance. 5 years ago, we launched Everflow, a rural maintenance service in partnership with the local government and hand pump mechanics. For 2 years, Stanford University confirmed Everflow's functionality and customer satisfaction were a quantum leap over the baseline, yet few customers made consistent payments, even at discounted fees. The World Bank estimated that O&M costs for rural water will exceed the cost of new infrastructure by 2025. Yet we haven't moved from a wasteful build, neglect, rehabilitate paradigm. Activities that improve household incomes, such as VSLAs and drip irrigation systems, will help increase payments from water users. Cross-subsidies for O&M include performance-based funding, such as the Uptime Catalyst, carbon credits, and investing in systems that can help spark service enterprises. The ripest opportunity to cut costs are in fee collections, transactions, and monitoring by such things as mobile money platforms, smart hand pump sensors, and prepaid hand pump terminals. For postpaid customers, we've designed multi-tier offerings harmonized with crop seasons. We've also developed metrics for hand pump performance to provide timely overhauls, reducing the cost burden caused by piecemeal repairs. Having an impact will involve multiple actors, including the private sector and local governments. In Uganda alone, 25 to 30 million people experience appalling functionality. Fortunately, the Ministry of Water and Environment published a new framework allowing professional actors to engage in O&M. Investing in these opportunities can reduce costs by 3/4 compared to the build, neglect, rehabilitate paradigm. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bashir Yachuri. I work with Aquaya Institute as a program officer, and I'm based in Ghana. I'll be sharing with you how branded water kiosks help improve revenue generation for water systems in a Stiffy North district in Ghana. To give you a brief background, Aquaya formative research in 2018 showed that water points revenue were consistently below estimated potential. This was because water vendors did not stay longer at the water points and also did not enforce the pay-as-you-fetch tariffs, undermining the ability of the water systems to cover maintenance and operating expenses. To provide a solution, Aquaya installed 30 branded water kiosks to formalize revenue generation at the water points. Aquaya trained water operators and vendors on financial literacy. In addition, Aquaya collaborated with the District Assembly to engage the communities on the pay-as-you-fetch concept. The kiosks served as a shade, and the vendors were also given a seed grant of $43 to stock wash-related petty goods. Impacts. There was a 51% median increase in revenue. The kiosk increased revenue with wide variation. The District Assembly logo encouraged the pay-as-you-fetch in communities and was the key driver of success. The success of the kiosk resulted in World Vision International constructing additional 20 water kiosks for water systems in the district. In conclusion, the branded water kiosk made significant impacts. It improved revenue generation, water system maintenance, vendors' livelihood, and water quality services delivery. Thank you for listening.
Good morning. My name is Philip Deal, the Director of Ongoing Service Delivery at Water4. Water4 is focused on delivering safe, reliable water to the communities we serve, and today I will be telling you about an innovation that helps our partners to achieve that goal, a new hand pump chlorinator called the New Pump. Although over 200 million people are likely relying on water from hand pumps in sub-Saharan Africa, there's no guarantee of safe water quality of these hand pumps. Water4, like others within this group, wanted to investigate what it would take to guarantee safe quality and whether or not that would increase the value of service to its customers. In order to test this theory, Water4 developed a prototype called the New Pump, an inline hand pump chlorinator that includes an erosion-based chlorine cartridge and a small sediment filter. The cost of the prototype was between $900 and $1,000. We are interested to test whether rural communities would be more likely to pay for hand pump maintenance if the water was treated. The product was piloted in 10 communities in the western region of Ghana, with a 9-month independent study of performance by Aquaya. Aquaya's independent assessment surveyed 661 households. Water4 used 3 criteria to evaluate the success of the pilot, including water quality, financial viability, and customer experience. Here's what we found. With respect to water quality, the technical performance of the New Pump is best in class and consistently doses hand pump water with free chlorine under a circuit rider maintenance operation. Results showed that 94% of samples had no E. coli detected, with a mean chlorine residual of 0.6 milligrams per liter at the hand pump and 0.28 milligrams per liter at the household. With regards to financial viability, the findings of the double-bound willingness to pay method concluded that households would be willing to increase monthly payments from 4.3 CDs per month to 6.5 CDs per month on average. The additional fee that households are willing to pay for this product is sufficient to cover its operating costs for chlorine cartridges and minor repairs, but insufficient to pay for major repairs in the long term. Based on these findings, subsidies would be required to make the current version of the New Pump a sustainable solution. The customer was found to be interested in a safe, tasty, and convenient product with regards to the customer experience. While the New Pump meets the safety criteria, chlorine taste is often undesirable in this rural market. Likewise, convenience is almost always a priority over safety, meaning the increased effort in pumping for water with the New Pump, even if guaranteed safe, is not necessarily preferred. So what? Through this, Water4 observed the same trends that made Numa piped water successful. Consumers prioritize their water choices in order of convenience, cost, taste, aspiration, and health. The New Pump is certainly a viable product for customers where health is the highest priority, such as a healthcare facility reliant on a hand pump. And while there is still interest in Water4 allowing this prototype to become open source for refinement by other implementers, hopefully leading to a tighter price point and more opportunities, we will continue to look at other markets as well, where Water4 will continue to innovate safe water solutions like the New Pump, but also work hard on an excellent customer experience to create that value and buy-in for sustainable use. We hope that our talk helps your organization learn and grow alongside us at Water4. Thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edna Samuel from the Aquaya Institute. I'm presenting an innovative inline chlorinator device bundled with hand pump maintenance service to improve water safety in rural Uganda. Next slide. In Uganda, hand pumps are the primary source of drinking water for approximately 42% of the population, and they remain an important part of drinking water supply globally. However, a large proportion of the water supplied from these sources do not meet the national drinking water standards. And further, after collection, water contamination is likely to increase during transport, handling, and storage. As a result, fecal contamination in drinking water can cause diseases and is a health risk in many rural communities. However, consistent water treatment is rarely practiced. Next slide. So inline chlorination is a water treatment method that passively disinfects water as it gets pumped. In practice, water passes through a chlorine tablet and gets chlorinated by eroding the tablet. This seems like a promising approach for disinfection at hand pumps, as it requires less household level behavior changes. In order to facilitate the supply chain and maintenance of the chlorinators, bundling the technology with a hand pump maintenance service could be an appropriate strategy to conjointly manage the operation. Eventually, this would provide a complete water service that combines undisturbed access to water and access to safe water. Hence, it could be a potential solution for improving safe water service delivery and protecting public health in rural communities. Next slide. So we conducted a randomized evaluation with 20 customer communities of an existing hand pump maintenance service. 10 of the communities received the chlorinators, while 10 acted as a control and did not receive the chlorinators. In general, water samples collected at the boreholes were safer compared to the ones collected at the household levels, which were highly contaminated. The intervention or the innovation that was implemented was not effective. In fact, no water safety improvement was detected in communities where chlorinators were installed compared to where there was no chlorinator. Thank you.
I'm Wasis Martin, and I want to share with you the case of IRC Uganda of improving the safety of point water sources, especially in a rural district of Kabarole in Western Uganda. This is about involving communities to improve on their water sources. Kabarole has over 1,400 point water sources. Unfortunately, over time, water quality analysis has indicated that majority of them, over 60% of the samples taken, showed presence of E. coli contamination. And the positive side about it is that maybe the solutions lay with the communities themselves. Most of the sources of the contamination can be dealt with by the communities, by involving the communities. That's why we engaged in this proactive approach of water safety planning by training over 48 community extension workers to engage communities in risk assessment, identifying and also carrying out mitigation measures. And the results have showed that there is a positive impact when communities are engaged. Many of them were able to do minor repairs and therefore improve on the functionality of these point water sources, and also change their behaviors, especially around open defecation, and therefore reduce contamination that come from poor sanitation. New toilets have been constructed and community structures have been established to monitor and improve on these water sources. So you could refer to this case mainly, especially in the Kabarole district in the Chijura Town Council. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bashir Yaturi. I work with Aquaya Institute as a program officer, and I'm based in Ghana. I'll be sharing with you how Aquaya designed a water quality testing assurance farm program to encourage existing laboratories to provide water quality services to small town water systems, and how that has improved water safety management in Estufin North District in Ghana. First, I would like to tell you a little about the Assurance Farm program. Aquaya conducted formative research in 2018 that revealed insufficient water quality data. No one acted because no one knew about it. The test results indicated widespread E. coli contamination. To provide a solution, in March 2020, Aquaya established an agreement with the District Assembly, Ghana Water Company, a nearby laboratory, involving 10 water systems that serves approximately half of the district population. The laboratory conducts monthly testing. The assurance fund pays the lab in case the water system cannot pay. The defaulted water system paid the cost of testing plus a fine of 5% into the assurance fund at a later date. The results are communicated to the water operators and communities for action. It is important to mention that professionalizing water quality testing has been the entry point for a series of changes. To start with, water is now being treated. Revenue generation has improved and improved trust in the treated water systems. In conclusion, the assurance fund is a mechanism that promotes water quality testing whilst relying on existing actors and capacity. Thank you for listening.
Great. Great. So we are now through the end of the first part of our session today, where you heard a short pitch about each intervention or strategy. So I'm summarizing them again here on this slide. Now I'm going to ask all speakers to turn on their video, and we're going to start the second part of the session, which is a panel where I will ask everyone 1 or 2 questions to deep dive into the strategy they presented, and particularly I will ask them to be transparent about challenges and failures. So welcome to all of those who have joined us meanwhile. So I will start with a question for Igor Markov. Oh, sorry, before I do that, I want to make an announcement about 2 speaker changes. So 2 of the people you've heard from in the video are based in the US and so could not join in person because it is the middle of the night. So Mandy Goksu from Water4 will be representing Philip Beal, and I will be answering question on behalf of Catherine Marshall. Great, so we will start with a deep dive on the financial management side. So Igor from Lifeline, welcome Igor, I'm glad you could join us despite the technical challenges. So can you tell us more, okay. Can you tell us more about reducing collection costs? You mentioned that in your presentation. What have been your biggest gains in reducing collection costs and why? And what are some remaining challenges that you see?
Yeah, so there's no, as you can imagine, silver bullet as such solution. What we've been trying to do over the last 5 years is learn what works. And that what we have found out is being flexible is the key. So that means providing many channels, bank account, direct cash payment to mechanics, mobile money, etc. And also being a bit flexible in the schedule. So we started with a monthly tariff. As you can see, we're moving to a model that's more adapted to crop cycles because, you know, most of our constituents are not salaried employees. And I think that something that we have not tried yet that is likely to have an impact is the terminals that we referred to about, the prepaid terminals. They also increase equity. We have found that communities that have lesser number of households are less likely to join us at a flat rate, of course, because, you know, it's a bigger burden per household. But we still haven't cracked that one. Sometimes we're competing against each other. We're competing with free services, and that's a major issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Igor. You mentioned in your presentation that demand for hand pump O&M, even though it's a big need, there is low customer demand, low willingness to pay. So I imagine this means there is a subsidy going in, and can you tell us more on the source of the subsidy?
Yeah, this has been the biggest barrier to growth of Everflow, has been the lack of willing subsidies. So we started with an initial seed funding from a donor. We have been kept alive mainly by the founder of Lifeline himself, providing, you know, he believes in the initiative's potential. So he has provided some funding. During COVID-19, we were also able to obtain some additional funding for Everflow, but it has been piecemeal. So going forward, I see the uptime catalyst as a key because, you know, once you are funded, you have a measurable outcome provided you deliver the services. Well, I would say that one of the ambitious things we're embarking in is planning a district-wide, a 5-year learning period where we will obsess about customer demand and about reducing the cost of service delivery. So not seeing the service the way we think it should look, but really leveling with our customers and seeing what are the basics that have to be covered, and is there a cost point there where organic revenue can meet it? Thank you.
Thank you, Igor. My next questions are to Bashir Yachouri from Aquaya, my colleague. Bashir, I want to ask you more about branded kiosks. So in your example, I know that kiosks were installed both at standpipes and hand pumps, and each kiosk was attended by a vendor, as we can see on the picture. And the vendor reports to the management, the managers of the water system. And in Ghana, rural water supplies are owned by the local government, the district assembly. So would you recommend this approach everywhere, Bashir? Does it always work? I think it does not. Like I know from our results that 3 years after we started the kiosk, about over half of the kiosks have closed down, which could be partly due to COVID, but maybe not only. So does this suggest that this approach is not useful in all cases? Can you tell us more about where you would recommend this and where you would not?
Thank you. I think I will not recommend the kiosk everywhere. Based on our qualitative comparative analysis, we identified two sets of favorable conditions that can guide future kiosk intervention. We suggest that these conditions are used by implementers when prioritizing kiosk installation to attempt in order to maximize benefit from the kiosk intervention. The two favorable conditions are: one, in the urban areas, kiosks were most successful at improving revenue when installed at water points with an educated vendor and where there are existing social norms to pay for water. What I'm trying to say here is that in urban areas where the vendor was educated and then it was generally accepted for them to pay water, the results we had actually shows that the kiosk was more effective in those kind of settings. And at the rural standpoint, kiosks were most successful where the vendors kept good financial records. And so if you are going to implement the kiosk in the future, in the urban areas, we recommend that you install the kiosk where the vendor is educated and it is generally accepted for them to pay for water. And at the rural areas, when the vendor is educated, you mentioned that it is true that 19 out of the 31 out of the 30 kiosks have included as of today, but it is important to mention that most of the kiosks was influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic and it associated economic downturn. The government of Ghana gave a directive that all water operators should provide water for free for 18 months, starting that was April 2020 to 2021. And what happened was that there was lockdown in some part of the countries, and most of these vendors could not actually sell water again because water was for free. And some of them had to depend on the seed grant that was given to them to complement the commission that we were going to meet from the water. And before the free water came to an end, most of them has actually depleted the capital by using it to feed their families. And as a result, when we resumed the payers to fetch, most of them could not have the capital to be able to stock petty goods, to be able to sell in the kiosks. So the kiosk close down was largely affected by the COVID-19 that hit the country so hard, and then we were providing water for free. So it is important to mention that yes, most of the kiosks some of the kiosks perform very well, but for you to be able to maximize the benefit, if you are going to install the kiosk in the urban center, once again, you look at the vendors that are educated in the rural sector, you look at where the vendor can also keep good records. Thank you.
Thanks, Bashir. So really interesting to know that the success of the kiosk is highly dependent on the vendor characteristic herself. The next question is for Catherine Marshall, my colleague, because she's in the US. I will answer on her behalf. So the question was, what are the mechanisms to help prevent the money from the village savings group to be embezzled by a single given person? And so how do we make sure there is accountability? So those are informal village savings groups. So first of all, there is no like formal penalty or enforcement mechanism. If someone runs away with the money or defaults on the loan, there is no real recourse. However, there is really high trust and kind of informal accountability between members. And one of the processes for safeguarding the money, it's kept either in a bank account or in a lockbox with 3 keys, 3 different people have the key, and every transaction happens in public. So to withdraw money out of this account or of this box, all members need to be gathered at a single place, and they can witness the transaction. So those are some of the processes happening. If they want to get some money out of the water fund to pay for hand pump O&M or repairs or things like that, they would have to go through this process where the transaction happens during the meeting, so it's highly visible, and that provides some accountability. A second question that some of my colleagues asked is, okay, so if there is more water, there is now more money available for hand pump O&M, are there any challenges or pitfalls that we should be aware of? And I think there are 2 main that I want to highlight. Number one, having money aside for O&M is one part of the puzzle, but if you don't have a good service provider to provide that O&M, then it's useless. And so in districts where Everflow is not present, in Uganda, this means like solving the puzzle of professionalizing the service provision of O&M, which is not always present. The second pitfall is that in a community, not all water users choose to join the village savings group. And so you have a mismatch between those who actually contribute for the water point and those who use it. And over time, this can create tension. If it's a small mismatch, then it's going to be fine. But if it's a big mismatch, then people contributing are going to be frustrated over time. And this is something that we haven't really resolved. One approach is when a breakdown does occur, that the users are asked to contribute after the fact, but we are very aware this is a source of tension. Nevertheless, I will point out that in the communities where this was piloted, the water points went from having 0 money for O&M to enough money to cover O&M. So despite the pitfalls I mentioned, it was a huge improvement compared to the status quo. Great, so enough questions to myself. So we're gonna move on to the topic of water safety. Mandy, from Water4, I would like to ask you a question about Water4's hand pump chlorinators. So in the presentation, Philip mentioned that the technology may be most viable for healthcare facilities as opposed to communities who may not value health, or they may not prioritize health over convenience and aesthetics. So can you tell us a little bit more about the use case of healthcare facilities? Do you think healthcare facilities can afford the cost of maintaining and operating the chlorinators? And what are the supply chains that healthcare facilities have to use to procure the consumables? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Caroline. So initially we started off hoping that this product would actually improve community payments for pump insurance, which is a product that we offer. So adding more value for the customer to pump insurance in the community. But what we found through the work we've done with you is that really the best use case for this, high need for it. So imagine a rural area, there's no access to piped networks anytime in the near future. So a hand pump chlorinator can really protect, against further contamination as water is being maybe put into different types of storage areas throughout the healthcare facility. The cost is relative for the capital cost of the installation, and then the O&M cost is about $20 to $25 a month, and that covers the replacement, the use of the chlorine tablets and a couple of other smaller components. So we believe, institutions like healthcare facilities would have likely more so have access to that $20 to $25 a month O&M fee. Of course, it requires also a circuit rationalized operator. And then another factor, so essentially using ground transport for sodium hypochlorite is necessary given the regulations around transporting it. And so you would need to have that available in the regional city within your area. And then replacement of the tablets happens about every 6 to 8 weeks. And then I think you asked on affordability. Yeah, I think every healthcare facility would essentially have to do a cost benefit analysis to determine the other options they have available to them, like ceramic filters, for example.
Thank you, Mandy. Edina, the next question is for you. So you presented an experience from Uganda where hand pump chlorinators were not as successful at improving water quality in households. Can you explain why you think we did not see any improvements there?
Thank you so much, Caroline. So generally, in order for this intervention to potentially result in an improvement in household drinking water quality, there were 4 essential elements that would have worked or performed very well in order for us to see an improvement. First of all, the chlorine supply chain should be performant, meaning that the chlorine tablets should be consistently delivered, they should be monitored and replaced. However, at the time of data collection, 3 out of the 10 hand pumps had the chlorine tablets. Secondly, the chlorine dosage at the hand pump should deliver an adequate residual. Unfortunately, the chlorine levels were highly variable, and actually 50% of the jerrycans did not get any chlorine levels at all. And thirdly, the initial disgust that is related to the smell and the taste of chlorine, since these are rural communities that are not used to chlorine itself, resulted to majority of the households or some of the households shifting to other water sources that actually did not have the chlorine tablets or the chlorinator. And finally, we also had a situation of, this is something that we actually hypothesized, that household drinking water storage should not last longer than the chlorine residue. At the time of data collection, majority of the household drinking water quality samples that were collected, they had been stored for more than 12 hours. And actually more than 50% of these samples had been stored for more than 24 hours. So generally looking at these 4 essential elements that could have, if they could have worked very well, then potentially we could have seen an improvement in the water quality. Thank you.
Thanks, Edina, for reminding us, despite all the hype around inline chlorination these days, there are some real barriers to making it work, both technological and behavior change related and organizational as well. Martin, my next question is for you, Martin Watsisi from IRC. You presented on water safety plans in rural communities. Can you tell us how this approach can be scaled? Like, who should be involved? Which stakeholders would play a role in scaling this up beyond a pilot?
Thank you, Caroline. Water safety planning is quite labor intensive. Like you need to engage a community probably 3 or more times, and only the local governments are in position to support that kind of engagement. That's why IRC, we looked at training or giving this capacity to the government workers, the extension workers based in these communities, because they have more consistent engagement with the communities. But I must say that it is also quite cumbersome, and not many government workers themselves are interested in that kind of high-level interaction with the communities, and not all the challenges that are assessed on a water point that create challenges with the water safety can be resolved. So some of them require beyond the community measures, and the government workers are uncomfortable dealing with situations where they have to respond to things which are beyond the community ability.
Thank you, Martin. Bashu, I have a second question for you regarding the second strategy you presented, the Water Quality Assurance Fund, which I should specify is currently managed by Aquaya and funded by the Hilton Foundation. Bashu, is the assurance fund financially sustainable on its own, or does it require subsidies?
Thank you, Caroline. In our pilot, the assurance fund paid for 20% of the invoices that were issued by the water quality laboratory. That meaning the remaining, in theory, there's a clause that the water system must reimburse the fund. If they are not able to pay, then the assurance fund pays the assurance fund, but this has not been effective. Nevertheless, we don't necessarily view this as a proven.
I'm sure we're losing you, I think.
We have seen.
Bashu, I think you cut off for me, so in case this was true for other people, I will quickly summarize what I think I heard. The assurance fund does get depleted over time because we experienced that about 20% of water quality tests are unpaid, and so the assurance fund has to pay for those. However, despite the fact that it gets depleted and requires subsidy, we don't view this as a failure, because this is the most cost-effective way to subsidize water quality monitoring that we have seen over the years. Marieke from IRC, my last question is for you. So as we know, IRC supports local governments in developing master plans, long-term plans. And to what extent do you think these master plans should address or do address financial management and water safety? And do you think there are opportunities to address these topics more explicitly and possibly to incorporate or think about some of the strategies we've heard about today?
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, the master plan visions, which are set jointly by district stakeholders with the leadership of local government, they're usually about the proportion of the population that will have access, or that should have access to basic and to safely manage sustainable water services by a certain year, for example, 2030. So these master plans set out strategic directions and costed plans to achieving that. So during the master planning process, the different options for addressing financial sustainability and water safety issues are normally discussed, and the different options are discussed, which the district stakeholders can consider most useful for including in the plan. And these can include, and often have included, some of the strategies and the options that have been discussed in this session. So also after publication and after the launching of the master planning document itself, district stakeholders may discover additional useful strategies or options for addressing financial sustainability and water safety. And these can then be taken up as part of the collective action related to master plan implementation, and enable going from the current situation towards the vision. So master planning process really acts as kind of like a starting point for collective action. And on the issue of financial sustainability, as mentioned in the presentation, as part of the master planning process, an analysis is made of all the life cycle costs that are required to achieve the vision. And the current level of funding, and then also the funding gap, and strategies are developed for addressing those gaps. And these strategies can and have included some of the strategies that have been discussed in this session. For example, strategies for improving pay-as-you-fetch to increase user revenue for covering operational costs. And as part of the district-wide master planning process, district stakeholders are very much invited to brainstorm on strategic directions and actions. So whether or not the strategies discussed in this session are included in the master planning process depends very much on the suitability of these strategies for a specific district context, but also of the familiarity of stakeholders in the district with these strategies and options. And therefore, I think sharing lessons learned from these strategies in platforms like these, but also in national and local platforms is so very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Marieke, and everyone for your thoughtful answers. So this concludes the formal main room panel for today's session. We are going to move on to the breakout rooms. So I'm going to create two breakout rooms right now, which are really the Q&A part of this. So I know there is a ton of Q&A going on right now in the chat, but we'll have more opportunities in the breakout rooms. So Mandy from Water4, Martin from IRC, and Edina and Bashu from Aquaya will go to the breakout room on water safety, so you can ask your questions there. And then Igor from Lifeline, Marieke from IRC, and myself will go to the breakout room on financial management to answer questions on that. So I will ask all moderators to come back to the main room in 24 minutes. So that's at 11:15, the time of Stockholm time, but calculate wherever you might be what this means. So in 24 minutes. So I think you should see a link, correct me if I'm wrong, to join a room. Is that working? Yes, okay. Interestingly, I don't see a link to join, but that's okay. I'm gonna find it. Can everyone verbally confirm that they can join rooms? Can someone confirm?
Caroline, I am seeing people joining rooms.
Okay, and how come I can't join a room? Is that normal?
It sees breakout rooms in progress. The two that I see right now, financial management and water safety, and they've got people going into them. So
okay, great. Yeah, someone is saying they don't have a link.
It says all the breakout rooms are set to close in 110 seconds as well. So I don't know if they were set up correctly.
No, probably not. Is there a way for me to change that, or?
It's in the settings for when you set up the breakout rooms.
Those are closed now for me, strangely. Okay.
I accidentally left the group. I can't get back in again.
Okay, so I think there is a technical issue on my end, but Nick, I no longer have access to settings on the breakout groups. Maybe I just have to wait until they're closed.
Without being, I'm going to take over host from you for just a moment and see what I can do.
I'm not sure how to join. I can see.
Yeah, if you give me just a moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, apologies, everyone. I'll give everyone some time to prepare their questions.
Yeah, options are not showing up for me either.
Okay.
Well, we'll see what happens here in 70 seconds.
Okay. If that doesn't work, won't do breakouts. We'll do the main room.
Okay.
I
will give you host back just so you can do whatever you need to do.
So it again says they'll close in 2 minutes. Is that normal?
It would just be however the rooms are set up to be. And it looks like they were set to be 2 minutes long instead of 24 minutes long.
And there's no way to change that?
I would assume that there was, but whenever I took over host from you, I didn't have the ability to change.
Yeah, me neither. Okay. Okay, so maybe let's forget about breakout rooms. There, it's not working for us. So I think we're just gonna do the main room. So maybe we'll spend the first 10 minutes on financial management. So Igor, if you're still happy to moderate, maybe could you field some of the questions you'd like on that topic?
Yeah, very happy. I see Tanner has already answered one, which was regarding, I believe, the involvement of districts. People are asking also, how does a VSLA provide the loan for the water users? Is there a different way of fee collection by law to fit the VSLA credit system? So maybe, I think that's back to you guys in Aquaya, right? I think people want to know, how do you make people talk about their savings and loans and at the same time produce savings for O&M?
Great, that's a great question. So in the VSLA, people make either monthly or bi-monthly deposits to their own savings account. And the constitution of the VSLA says that every time they do that, a certain percentage goes into a water fund. So a ring-fenced water fund. So every time they deposit, I don't know, $1, maybe 10 cents go to the water fund. So it's happening weekly, and it's there's two like sets of accounting books, one for the savings that people can make or use to take loans, and the water fund is ring fenced.
Okay, thank you. So I got the original question from John Butterworth. John, would you mind asking that question verbally? And please tell us where you are, because I think context matters a lot.
Yeah, my last question that I put in. Yeah, John Butterworth. I sit in Poland, but I work within IRC's team where Marika also works, and Martin. Martin's in our Uganda team, and I work supporting all of our country teams. Yeah, my question was really about, you know, to what extent are we really sure or confident that we want to put a lot of our, that we should be concentrating on improving community managed models, and do we also need to be looking at other solutions? You know, I think in both these places, some of these models won't get us to safely managed services, if I understand correctly. And yeah, do we need to think a little bit wider? And that was why I also see there's a little bit of use for the master plans, because there's very little discussion typically within locations about how you put different service delivery models together. Usually it's one or the other. Can we make some improvement to one? And that was my question. How confident are we in these countries that we've got sort of government support for the long term behind us to improve these community managed models?
Okay, so well, here I would be able to speak my mind regarding my experience in Uganda. I think there's a difference between policy and action, right? And that's also key in government involvement. So in Uganda, the national government and the Ministry of Water and Environment sent a very strong signal by publishing in 2020 the Rural Operation and Maintenance Framework, right? And the framework, in some places, it's not completely easy to understand, but for sure, it allows for professionalization of services and for local governments to use public procurement to bring in area service providers, right? So that addresses something in policy, but it's very hard to make it happen when the local governments themselves are not aware and are not fully on board in some cases, right? They have their own old way of doing things oftentimes. So it makes it very difficult. I think that, you know, your idea of you know, doing an ecosystem level planning is very essential. My only fear in this is that we're trying to reinvent the wheel in every territory we go to. And there might be a bit of repetition required for sure, right? To understand the context. But it, you know, what we are trying to do is try to focus a lot on the supply side of things, to try to polish a model that is affordable enough for communities to cover it, because if we always want to have all the bells and whistles, we get a lot of false starts from that. So that's something we are trying to work on. So the government part is a mixed bag, right? Because we have an enabling environment, but nobody's willing to foot the bill. And the local governments themselves are sometimes not aware of what's the new direction of the policy. So external funding is a sad but true reality at the moment. And coming from the private sector myself, I can tell you, if there was demand and this was a business, this would have been taken over by Coca-Cola and the like, right? So it's a very tough market.
Igor, you're muted.
I muted myself. Thank you, Carol. So I don't see any other questions related to the funding theme here.
Does anyone have a question maybe that they want to ask? We can take one more.
Yes, may I come in? The hand button is not working for me, so I don't know why. So if you allow me, I want to come in on the finance. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm Martha Salomon, based here in Ethiopia, work for British Embassy as lead WASH advisor, supporting the UK WASH portfolio implementation. My question is regarding to the financing. Maybe I would like to thank those who entertained some of the questions that you posed, but my question is, most of the discussion so far is focusing, as mentioned by John earlier, is on a kind of small system really managed by communities. But we have some experiences in some part of the country, and also here in Ethiopia, the government is moving towards more big schemes which are more sustainable than the small ones like hand-dug wells and on-spot springs, which require more a bit of semi-professional management setup, like rural utility models. But for those ones to be sustainable, the financial sustainability is a key element for them to handle the post-construction costs, be it for O&M or spare parts supply and others. So what do you think is the main key ingredient to ensure financial sustainability of such kind of management models like rural utilities? And second question is regarding the master plan. In such cases, what we have is management setups at the scheme level, but your master plan is discussing about master plan at district level. Within these districts, you may have so many schemes which are managed with different management models. Why don't you work on management master plans for those specific utilities or a specific management setup instead of to have a kind of districts, which will be a bit challenging to translate into action? Over to you. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much for the question. I think that IRC is probably taking at least the second part of the question, right? Yeah, Marike, you want to go ahead?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, very good question. There are indeed many, as most districts, there are different service delivery models present. There utilities, but also community management, etc. And the district-wide master planning is about acknowledging those different service delivery models and being very and coming up with a strategy which service delivery models are best suited for going forward to ensuring that people have access to safely managed water services, so on premises available when needed, free from contamination, as well as basic services where that is more appropriate, so within 30-minute round trip. So having a good idea of what kind of mix of service delivery models is needed is an essential part of district-wide master plans. Then the second part is ensuring that those different service delivery models are able to function and are able to provide the services that they intend to provide. And that's, I think, where some of these options that we've been discussing come in places where community management is relevant. Then I think the question about should we also have master plans, for example, for utilities, for service providers? Yeah, definitely. And I don't think one excludes the other. I think utilities need to have strategic plans in place as well. Both rural utilities as well as urban utilities, they need to have these strategic long-term plans, but they need to ideally fit with area-based plans, for example, district border plans in Ethiopia. And yeah, these need to fit together, I would say, but definitely both are needed. And yeah, both are needed if we want to go to sustainable water services for everyone forever. I hope that answers your questions to some degrees, Marta.
Thanks, everyone. I think we can move on to the topic of water safety, because we can spend approximately 10 minutes on that. Edina, thanks for moderating that part. Can you field any questions on that?
Sure, Caroline. I think some of the team members on water safety, they're on the breakout rooms, but it's not working very well. So we do have a question from, yeah, it's directed to me. Are there available results of the hand pump chlorinators under controlled environment where all the variables you mentioned were properly met? If so, which have been the results in that case in terms of water safety improvement? Maybe Caroline, you can jump in on this one.
Right. So whether there are, so the technology, when the specific hand pump chlorinator, when you test it in yourself, like in the lab, it works, I would say, like, 60–70% of the time. It doesn't deliver a chlorine dose all the time. So we know it's not the perfect technology, the one we use, the Purell 50H. So we really, but we know it does deliver some chlorine. So that's why we inferred that the reason we were not seeing water quality improvements in the home were due to something else. Number one, there was no chlorine in the chlorinator. Number two, some people switched sources because they didn't like the taste, but that was actually minor. And number three, people store water way too long. So we did another controlled study of that afterwards to document this. And when people do get chlorine at the hand pumps, after 1 day, it's gone from their storage containers. And in settings where people store water more than 1 day, which actually is many settings, the chlorine at the point of collection is almost useless. So it's gone by the time they consume water. So it's no longer protected by the time they consume it. So the technology, yes, we've tested the technology in a controlled way. It's not the best, but it provides enough that you should see improvements in the home, and the lack of improvements in the home is due to something else.
Thank you, Caroline. The next question, still directed to me, from Christine from CMN Stiftung, engaged in community-led safe water enterprises, Kenya and Uganda. I would be interested to learn on the effects of consuming chlorinated water. What are the experiences over a long period of time? I mean, this is interesting based on what we had and the way we interacted with the communities. So when we installed the chlorinators, we did a follow-up, we did some qualitative follow-ups with the community members, as well as the caretakers, just to get their perceptions about chlorine. I mean, one, I would say the effects could be based on the dosage levels that the chlorinator redoses into the containers. But as well, as Caroline mentioned, we realized that, based on how long the households store their water, at some point the chlorine disappears. So what happened is, since these are rural communities that are really not used to the smell or the taste of chlorine, at that time, when they're immediately fetching water from the hand pump, they would really feel that smell and the taste. It didn't have any, effect at all nor did we have any, households reporting any health effects related to consuming the water that has been chlorinated. But again, from the qualitative interviews, we actually learned from the community members themselves that, they would say, once you fetch this water, the smell or the taste is really different, or the smell is very high. But if you store it for some number of hours, the smell disappears and the water is okay for them to use it. So we didn't, have or experience any health effects related to the, consuming water that has chlorine. And it's even the community members themselves that came up with their own adaptive strategies on how they would continue getting used to the water that is chlorinated. Thank you. I don't know if I answered your question very well, or if you have any other question. Still checking on questions related. So there was another question that is directed to the new pump, Waterfall. I would like to know if it has been taken through the technology applicability framework, which is the government of Ghana approved tool, which must be used to assess the applicability, scalability, and sustainability of WASH technologies prior to their approval. If it has, what were the issues that came up with? Question comes from Seiram from WaterAid Ghana. The Waterfall team.
I don't see them here. You think they're the ones stuck in the breakout rooms? That's really confusing. On my end, the breakout rooms are closed.
Yeah, my name is Frederick. I'm the MD for Waterfall in Ghana, so I can take that question.
Sure.
This has not gone through the regulatory system in Ghana. We wanted to test it first, and since we are not going to use it on a large scale immediately, we just haven't prioritized that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions that are directed to the water safety team.
Does anyone want to ask a question verbally? Turn on their mics. Oh, I see someone raise their hands. Go ahead and speak up.
I think it's for me. My name is Muluna from World Resource Institute Addis Ababa office. I raised two questions in the chat room. One is about the applicability of VSLA for water supply fee collection, because we usually use VSLAs to provide credit for the users. But I want to get some clarity about how the VSLA provide credit for the water supply purpose. We know we have an experience in Ethiopia for VSLAs provide credit to purchase a bit high-priced sanitation and hygiene products, but we have no experience for water supply. My second question is about water safety plan. I see the water safety plan for the 100 wells or on-spot service provision schemes. We know we have also now practicing water safety plan in Ethiopia, a fund from Hilton. It is a good tool for sustainable water supply system from the source up to the mouth. But the management of water safety plan to all schemes, if we have thousands, like in one Warada, we are working like more than 10,000 of schemes there. So if we have such numbers, especially if we have a lot of 100 wells or on-spot service provision service, managing those kind of schemes would be tiresome, costly. So I think in order to use water safety plan as a good approach for the sustainable water supply, the supply system, the scheme system has to be also shifted from on-spot service provision into a rural piped connection system to reduce the number of water committee management, water management committees, and managing the water safety plan, because water safety plan is not one type. Thanks.
Martin, do you want to comment on the water safety plan remarks?
Thank you, and thank you, my colleague Molen. Regarding water safety plans, actually, it's hard to aggregate them at a higher level. It's better that they are handled at each individual water point or scheme, as it looks at the source to the point of use. For the schemes, the piped networks, it becomes complex, and it requires that the utility or the manager of that particular scheme looks at the water safety plan and manages it at the scheme level, at the utility, as a utility that is managing that particular piped network. For our case, we could not aggregate all of the issues of the different water points, maybe like at a higher administrative level. So it is preferred that it is handled at that community level, and therefore encourage the managers, if it is a water user committee or a utility or a water board, that they handle issues that cannot go beyond their ability, and it requires a different manager. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. And I will answer the question on the VSLAs. So the VSLA does not give loans for water supply. The VSLA operates normally. It gives out loans to people for their individual matters. And in addition to that, there is a small pot of money that is set aside for the water point, but it's not used to give loans to people. It's used to provide hand pump O&M, or build a fence around the water point, or do expenses related to the water point. So there is usually a water user committee that is in charge of the water point when they need money to do something. For example, pay a hand pump mechanic, build a fence, or something like that. They will go to the VSLA and say, please, can you give me such amount from the water fund? But it's not used to make loans. It's used to just pay for stuff. So that's the clarification I wanted to provide. So thank you, everyone. Our session is about to end. Apologies for the technical issues we have had with the breakout groups. I will now play a recording of Nabil Chimali's closing remarks. Nabil is from the Hilton Foundation and wasn't able to join due to time zones, but he still wanted to record his remarks. So I'm gonna play this, and then this will be the end of our session today. Welcome, Nabil. You are the Senior Officer for Safe Water at the Hilton Foundation. The Hilton Foundation supported a large part of the innovative work we presented today. As we are closing this session, we wanted to hear your perspective on innovation. And so I have two questions for you as part of closing remarks. To what extent do you think innovation has a role to play to improve water safety and financial management in the rural water sector? And secondly, what are some of the pitfalls or challenges you would like to highlight for us?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. And thank you for the introduction. So
just to quickly address your questions, from our perspective, innovation plays an important role in improving financial management and water safety in rural areas. The examples that will be presented, like all the saving mutuals or the reliance on technology like mobile money, all those innovations contribute to improving collection efficiency, the creation of a water quality insurance fund. All those are good options that are worth exploring, given that they address the main challenges in the WASH system. However, we should be open-minded when testing these innovations, given that what works in one context doesn't necessarily work in another. And also, it is important to pause, reflect, and emphasize learning. We at the foundation are open to being transparent about failures, and we are willing to learn from those failures and sharing results. So this is why it's important for us to determine what works and what doesn't. And we take pride actually in the integration of research and learning across our initiatives, all of them. Regarding your second question about the pitfalls and lessons learned, while innovations help, it is still important to have professional service providers with the required technical, financial, managerial, and customer service capabilities to deliver water services. To further promote innovation, it is important for the rural water sector to be as inclusive as possible and allow different social groups to provide their share. There's plenty of untapped potential amongst youth, for example, women, and other social groups working in sectors that are adjacent to the water sector. And there's need also to increase efficiency and performance, because both can spur more innovations, hence the importance of governments to identify the right opportunities for the private sector, for example, to engage in water service delivery. So just not to be like to spend too much time, but those are mainly the challenges that we see and the lessons learned from our perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes our session today. I hope it was it sparked interest in the different strategies to improve financial management and water safety, and that we can continue discussions offline as needed. Thank you to all speakers for their participation and contributions, and to the audience. Thank you very much, and have a good week. Bye.